Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Brandon Brown. With me is Mr. Will Carafello. We are going to have another installment of our wonderful series of Chalk Talks. As you can see, Will is with the New York Mets. Maybe as you can't see with that, but maybe as you can see from my gear over here, I'm representing both institutions, NYU with the combo of Mets. So Will is with the New York Mets. He's the senior director of social media for the New York Mets. And we wanted to continue this Chalk Talk series to continue our engagement with industry and perhaps give all of our students just a good bit of insight into the industry from a number of different perspectives. Will can certainly help to do us. He's been a longtime friend, a couple of years now, Will, I think, which is pretty crazy. Not just with me, but also with NYU as a program. So Will, so very happy to have you. Thank you so much for taking your time, taking time out of your day for being with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, but I just want to kick off the session again by saying thank you, Will, by telling our participants you can ask questions in the Q&A function at the bottom, and I'm going to get to these questions right around 5:45. So we're going to go for about 45 minutes. It's going to be an easy, quote unquote, fireside chat, field side chat for Will. That I'm going to talk to him all about his role with social media with the Mets. He's been with the Mets for 8 years, so maybe a history of his role with the Mets is pretty unique. And then, like I said, we'll go 45 minutes and then open it up to Q&A, which I'll read from the Q&A, or you can just put it right there in the chat and I'll get to it at 5:45. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Will. Let's start it off, Will. Just if you can, give us a brief background of where you came from, your history in the sports world, really brief to catch us up to date, to tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started out as an intern at Madison Square Garden. So, talk about a first impression. I mean, if I wasn't hooked in sports and entertainment by that internship, I was definitely not cut out for it. So I worked in the group sales department. From there, I actually, right out of college, I graduated and took a job with the Newark Bears. So a very humbling experience going from the world's most famous arena to unaffiliated minor league baseball in the great city of Newark, New Jersey. So it was a good experience, though, because again, being at the Garden, unbelievable experience. But in minor league baseball, you get to do everything. So you got a chance to see how an entire organization runs. So, from an early start, that was a great opportunity for me. Then from there, I was fortunate enough to come back to Madison Square Garden. I got a full-time role in their sports properties department, in which I did some marketing for the likes of college basketball and boxing and the sports events that came in that were not Knicks Rangers events. So the other sports. Then from there, I joined the Harlem Globetrotters, not as a player, clearly, but I joined the marketing team and got a chance to travel around and do marketing, across the United States and Canada. So it was a really cool opportunity to be able to travel and learn and see marketing, in sports and entertainment across. I think we had 30 or 35 cities. So, really good, opportunity for me. Then I came back home. I grew up in New Jersey, and I ended up working at the Meadowlands and Giant Stadium and Continental Airlines Arena. So, went there for a few years, then moved over to Prudential Center when that opened in 2007. So got a chance to open a brand new building in the state I grew up in. Then kind of made an in-house change, switched over to the Devils. So the Devils were the tenant of Prudential Center, switched over there, and that kind of got me back into the sports world, fully. And then, about a year or so into my Devils career, we had a very progressive president who was looking for a way for us to cut some of our marketing spend, and social media was just starting to become a real player in the sports game, and we went all in on social media. So had a chance to, obviously didn't grow up with it, so learned social media along the way. We did a lot of crazy things. We learned a lot. Had a really successful program over at the Devils. I think we were the 28th engaged team out of 30 when the first year I was there, which is obviously not great. But within a year, we were the most engaged team in hockey. So really, put together a nice program, and we were able to turn things around, which ultimately got me here. They were looking to hire the first person with the word social media in their title for the Mets, and had a number of interviews, and they vetted, poked, and prodded me, made sure I was the right person. Ultimately hired me, and I've been here. It'll be 8 years at the end of next month. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to build here, and to be a part of what the Mets. And I grew up a Mets fan, so really was an awesome experience.
Nice. As did I, by the way. And it just so happens that I'm interviewing you. I'm going to put all my bias aside. I'm going to put all my bias aside.
I'm okay with that.
You're okay with just me rocking this jersey.
Yeah.
Well, so 8 years is a long time in any organization, and it would be a long time in any given position. But you are in a unique position where your job has vastly changed over 8 years, just because of the mere fact that social media has vastly changed over the last 8 years. So I guess one of my first questions is that I want you to walk us through like what your roles and responsibilities initially looked like, and how they've evolved to now, and perhaps even tacking on that a little bit of how your staff has grown with you as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it has been night and day since my experience, literally 8 years ago, and even thinking back to, previous with the Devils. But I mean, we focused, 8 years ago, we really focused in on like finding, stuff. Like we would hope for the beat writer to write something and put it on the website, so we had something to share, or like go through old photos for Throwback Thursdays and stuff like that. Now it is full on content creation, and by content I really mean video. We do a ton of work with our productions team. We have hired a social media video editor who literally just focuses on pumping out social content, social content for the likes of YouTube, Twitter, Instagram stories, like TikTok. In fact, we're actually hiring a TikTok specialist right now. We're in the process of hiring that. So that was a position that didn't exist, this time last year. So I mean, the landscape has changed. We've become full-time content creators, and that really focuses on video.
So I love that. And you brought up something that I definitely want to tackle, this whole idea of TikTok person, right? You're now specifically going after an individual who's going to handle one particular medium or one particular platform. Take us through what platforms were available at the time when you first started, maybe just like Facebook and Twitter, and then how you got the platforms, or maybe even how you had to go to the higher ups to say, hey, we need an Instagram handle. Hey, we need a Snapchat handle. Tell us through that process of how you acquired different platforms, and what the process was talking to the higher ups to either convince them or eventually just take on these new platforms.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously the landscape changes every year. I mean, it's a constant change, which again keeps me busy, which is good. It's one of the things that keeps it exciting. But yeah, I mean, when I first got into social media, it was just Facebook and Twitter. Instagram came along shortly after, and it's funny, like you think back to those things and you're like, oh, we'll see if this lasts. I remember a time when Vine was the TikTok. There's been a number of things that have come along and not survived, and other things that have. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we've always tried to do at the Mets is get out in front of them. So like, for instance, when TikTok, came along, we jumped on, we try to learn. Triller, which is kind of like the US version of TikTok. Like we jumped on that really quickly, try to understand those platforms. And then again, really just to see like, Clubhouse is another new one, an audio-based thing. Spaces has done, Twitter has kind of thrown Spaces in there. So yeah, I mean, I think as soon as a new platform comes onto the space, we are very intrigued by it. We obviously, all of my Major League Baseball, like we work really closely with the league, as far as like rollouts and acquiring handles and stuff like that. But I mean, this one specifically, again, because we're going through it at the moment, is kind of like a very unique, because that's the thing, like TikTok specifically is a very unique platform, very different than anything else that we have. And I think the important thing with all of these social platforms is understanding the language. You got to speak the language in order to be successful on each of these platforms. So, one of the things I realized very quickly, and our team did, is like, we need someone who knows what they're doing on this platform specifically. Like, again, like, Instagram was a little bit easier because it was like, okay, pretty photos, but then they started making advancements as far as like adding video and IGTV and certain things. So, but you really have to have a good understanding of what's going to perform well on those platforms. So, yeah, it's definitely a lot of, conversations and awkward conversations at times with, people above my head to let them know, hey, this is something that's, a big thing. And sometimes I benefit from the fact that they have kids that are using these platforms of like, hey, should we be on here? Should we be doing this? So, or what do you think of this? So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely, it's an ever growing, landscape, and we do try to be ahead of it and try to, learn and speak the language when we're there.
So yeah, I just wanted to solidify one thing that you had said earlier, just going back to this point. So do you have to pass it by the league at all to say, okay, you know what, the Mets are going to go on Vine? And is that something that the league has to say, okay, all of our teams are going on Vine? Or can you, as the Mets, go on Vine? Half the people on this conversation don't know what Vine is, by the way. Can you, as the Mets, say, we're going to go on Vine, even though the Pirates aren't going to go on Vine, we just have to run it by MLB? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, previously it had to be an all for one for all situation where, like, for instance, like when I got here, the mascots weren't allowed to have social platforms. So, we had reached out and said, like, we really feel like this would help our business, and here's why. And again, we put together kind of just a one sheeter that says, here's why we'd like to do it. And again, that was probably weighed into a number of conversations that they've had at the league level. And, ultimately, all mascots have the capability of having those platforms. Triller's another example where I think there's only like 3 or 4 teams in that space. So again, it's one of those things where, like, we will work with the league, and the league will have the kind of the official workout, like rollout, but we do try to get there, try to understand it, because again, once they say go, we want to make sure that we're able to hit the ground running.
That's great, Will. One of the things that I also wanted to talk to you, and I mean, there's so many things that we have to talk about with evolution of role. Staff is a big thing. I know that your role itself has changed from the time you started on, but I also know the staff that you have has changed. I would imagine that when you first started, maybe it was just you and 1 or 2 other people. Talk about how your staff has changed, how many of you were there just handling social media, and now how big is your staff specifically dealing with social media?
It's still not enough. I'll start there, but yeah, no, I mean, we've grown. When I first got here, it was just me, and then, oh no, I take it back. We had a marketing assistant who kind of straddled the line of marketing and social media, and to be honest, like, he was kind of running the show with our media relations department before I'd got here. So but then we ended up hiring some interns, and that's really what it was. It was like, again, like, our focus was like, the Mets weren't live tweeting games. So, like, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, cool. Like, we've got to start basic blocking and tackling of, like, informing people when they're most engaged. Like, let's start there. But then, yeah, as the world has evolved, like, we've had some more specialized position. The video editor is a fairly new position. He's been here for probably about 3 years, where we realized, like, we could benefit from having someone legit spend an entire week or an entire year focused on creating content across all of our social platforms. And to be honest, like, we could probably employ 2 people doing that, just because, you're talking long form stuff for YouTube, you're talking highlights and stuff that we're going to put on Facebook and Twitter, and even more specialized stuff like an Instagram story or a TikTok. There's different nuances to videos like that. So yeah, I mean, those have, I think we're still a little bit, undersized. We're probably, I say that, and I know departments who are like 1s and 2s and they're running around. So, we have 2 full-time social media people, 1 full-time video editor, and then we have, I guess it's ultimately 3 part-time people who are assisting with, different things as well. So that's graphic design, video editing, and stuff like that.
It's changed so much. I remember using the Golden State Warriors as like an extreme example when they had one person for Twitter, one person for Instagram, one person for Facebook. And they were like the outrageous example, as in every other team just had one person handling social media. Speaking of, people used to look to the Golden State Warriors. Nowadays, who do you look to? And if you don't look to anybody, if you're just within yourself and you rely on your own strategies, who do you at least work with? What social media teams do you either look to or work with as you're rolling out your own content?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many teams that do things well in their market. I think that's one of the things that I try not to get caught up, because I know like there are certain things like the Rockies, for example, probably well known for the unique style that they have, but that works for them. That wouldn't work in New York. So, again, like there's certain things where we're seeing like, oh man, if we had done that, we would have got, slammed, or something the Giants have done. Again, I think, I think a lot of teams do really well in their market with their fan base. And that's one of the things where I've been here for 8 years and I have a really good pulse on our fans, like what's going to do well, what's not going to do well. So again, I don't have all the answers, but I kind of understand the Mets fan. So I think, from that perspective, there's so many teams that do well. And I think, from our standpoint, like we have a game plan, we try, this is our game plan. And, if the team wins, we
Will,
can.
I think I can't hear you anymore. I don't know what happened.
Oh, am I?
Yep, you're good now.
Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry. Yeah. So just again, I don't want to like signal out anyone, because there's so many peers of mine that do so many things really well. Like I don't want to signal one or two of them out, because there's a number that do. But I think just even seeing our staff, we've had a number of people who have left our staff and have gone on to do great things. Most recently we had one of our social media people is at the Seattle Mariners as a director. He's running the show for the Mariners, who's a really exciting team. We've had someone else go to MLB baseball. We've had others, branch out and go to other, social things. So, a little bit of a coaching tree, if you will. Like, we've done a really good job, I think, of training and maintaining people. So it is nice to see like, people that you've worked with go to other teams and see success there. So.
I love that. When you get a coach from Bama, you say that they're a Saban disciple. It's nice that you have your little Carafello disciple.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's got a nice little ring to it. You spoke about something that I love, which is this sense of brand personality. You said, hey, something that the Rockies are going to do doesn't necessarily work for us, right? What's your philosophy on brand personality? Prior to you coming in NYU, we had a talk one time with Katie Kaufman. And I'll never forget that she had said she ran the Tampa Bay Lightning social media. And she said, I took the characteristics of what I thought about Tampa Bay Lightning and I matched it up with a particular celebrity who just so happened to be, she said, Ellen DeGeneres, right? Like fun, quirky, cool. Mm-hmm. Those are the characteristics of the Tampa Bay Lightning. She said, I found that celebrity. And every time I went to tweet out, I tweeted as if it was her. I never forget that she said that. So what's your philosophy on brand personality and anything that you all either put on Instagram or Twitter? What's your perspective and what's your philosophy on putting messages out from the Mets brand personality?
Yeah, I think we're fun but professional. I think, again, our fan base is very serious. Again, this is a fan base that wants a win. They expect us to be professional. So again, I think we probably, and honestly, like our business is very much tied to the wins and losses. You don't want to have fun or show the players goofing off or doing things when the team is not winning. So, we've got to be really mindful of those type of things. And trust me, in my first couple of years, we tried a lot of things that did not work, right away. So that trial and error has helped me. So, yeah, I mean, I think we go in with that mindset, the same thing, like we have a lot of relationships. We'll chirp back and forth with teams, during the season. We do try to keep it professional. I always say that, we don't start a fight, but we will end it, with our responses. So, a lot of teams are like, we're playing the Marlins tonight, and they're very well known for being a little chirpy. So we won't necessarily go at them. And the Nationals, our division's filled with with personalities. We actually had a fun scenario this year where the Nationals, before the game had started, it was a Saturday game, and they had tweeted the best shortstop in the NL East plays for us, or something along those lines, and had a Trey Turner Lindor lineup of like, why his numbers were better than Lindor's. In the first inning, Lindor hit a home run, and we just quote retweeted that with the Lindor home run, and he had a monster game. I think we quote retweeted that tweet like 3 or 4 times. So again, like, we didn't start the fight, but we were very happy to put it to an end. So, and our creative designer took that MJ meme and put Lindor's head on it and I took it personally. So it was just it was we were able to have a little bit of fun with that.
So right there, I have so many questions out of that particular answer right there. Quickly, so that beef, do you like how improvised is that beef? How often is it you're talking to the guy who's in charge, the woman who's in charge of team A or team B, and you say, hey, we're going to be doing this. You guys expect to be doing that. We're going to be doing this. You may want to do this. How improvised is that, or how scripted is that, for a little behind the scenes information?
Yeah, I'd say most of us have really good relationships within baseball, and I'd even go as far as saying like we have a pretty good relationship with like the other teams in the area. So again, I think for the first time during 2020, we collaborated with the Yankees. That was the first time we ever behind the scenes got together and said, hey, we should do something together. So and that actually ended up being 2 projects. We did something around 9/11, and we also did something around the pandemic. So I think it's always on the table. We always we have good relationships. So again, it might just be like dropping a text of saying like, hey, let's team up on the Nationals, or like, hey, we need to get this team back, or whatever it is. But or if there's something that makes sense, again, like if a team's coming into town, we'll either get a text or an email, or all the teams in the league are on
Slack?
A Slack channel. Yeah. So, it'd be one of those things where someone will reach out and say, hey, I'm coming to town. Like, what's your level of, willing to participate in something like this or that. So, we'll do our best to kind of coordinate, but there are some times where like shots are fired and you're like, oh, I did not expect that coming. So, again, those are kind of reactional, but yeah, I think again, for the most part, I think we all try like, we do try to work together, or at least give heads up of saying, hey, and we've definitely had scenarios where we were caught off guard and had to react, in real time.
So that leads me to my next 2 questions, and that's going to be about autonomy. So I think maybe a lot of our students look at social media and they say like, oh, I would just tweet this, or I would just tweet that. How much freedom are you given, and is your team given to just go out there and I can tweet what I want because they trust me to go after a particular brand or stay along the lines of a particular brand? Or in some cases, do you have to run it by your boss before, okay, we're going to tweet this out? Tell us about the level of autonomy with you and your team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to say after 8 years, I do have the ability to not run that up the flagpole. If there's anything that I feel uncomfortable about, I already know my answer. And, sometimes, again, I will bounce those off, my direct boss and say, hey, we were thinking about doing this, or, hey, here's the situation. So, I would say 90%. There are those 10% of the times where I'm like, I don't feel comfortable about this, so we probably shouldn't. So let me just loop in someone else. And if they say, no, that's funny, like go for it, or that, do it, then we'll obviously take advantage of it. But usually my gut reaction is if I feel uncomfortable about it, we're probably not, we probably shouldn't do it. And I pulled the plug on things. I've had the plug pulled on me a few times. Again, I think it is just having that long-term experience. And I'm very appreciative to the team here that does kind of say like, the brand guidelines, and you know where the line is, stay on the right side of it. And there's definitely times where we straddled it and we've got really close to it. But again, I value the organization. I realize that our team here has a really important role for the organization. We speak on behalf of the owners, we speak on behalf of the ushers, we speak on behalf of the players, the coaching staff, everyone. Like, we get a great privilege of being able to be the voice of the New York Mets on our digital platforms, and not something that we take lightly. So we definitely appreciate that opportunity. I think everyone that's on the team is aware of that and realize they're part of something bigger. And again, as much as times I'd like to just fire off at a team or like respond to fans that are upset with our play or something like that, but I know that's not what the Mets organization would want, and fortunate that I do have the autonomy to do that.
That is fantastic to know. And like you said, it took you 8 years of being within the organization, and trust is a two-way street, and I'm sure you've built that trust. Can you also talk to us about autonomy as it relates to your own team? And I'd like you to give us like a glimpse into the war room, so to speak. So when you just said, okay, Lindor hits the home run, how much prep goes into, okay, we got all these cool images, we got all these cool memes set up, we got all these gifts set up, and then what does the war room look like? Are you like the executive producer with like a headphone, like, okay, fire tweet 1, Insta, I want you on this. Okay, TikTok, let's put a little something together. How does that war room look like when something happens real time in a game situation?
It's probably not as exciting as you described, but it's very similar. So I mean, ultimately, we are like, there's usually at least 2, maybe as many as 3 people here. Maybe even more than that if we have. So basically, someone from our staff is usually on field, both pre-game and then during the game, creating content. And then MLB provides us with as 1 or 2 LCCs, which are live content creators. So they're sending us photos, video in real time. And the same thing, we have our photographers here. So if you think about it, like, we have just so much resources coming in, as well as for the stuff from MLB. So, if we want gifts cut, or, obviously stuff that our creative departments and stuff have put together. So, we've got a lot of content that we have at our disposal. It really is, it's myself and the team. We're kind of working collaboratively. Twitter's kind of the last of the real-time platforms. So ultimately, like, that's the one where we spend the most time and effort, especially in game, of like, video, get the video out. Oh, we got good photos from the team photographer, or no, there's better photos over here from the LCC. Like, let's get that on Instagram, or let's push that out over here, or actually let's wait, or let's get the video cut, with more, we didn't get all the angles we were looking for. Let's get a different video cut and push that out on Facebook. So yeah, I mean, it's an organized, dance we do here of like, and again, we do try to split up. We try to have one person focus on Twitter because of the real-time nature, and we need to get that stuff out quickly. So, again, when we have someone new, we try to teach them during spring training when the games aren't as important. And then, the plan is in those 30 games, to get enough reps for everyone to kind of feel comfortable, like, hey, if this was a regular season game, I would know exactly what to do, or what the Mets brand would look like there. So yeah, I mean, it is, I think some of this fun stuff that we do get to work on is like the draft. That's one of those things where, being in that war room and, having all of the graphics ready to go, and like, then when the pick comes in, then it's like, okay, cool. Like, now we need to go and like reach out to the school and get more photos, or what video content, what does MLB have, that kind of stuff. So, we'll have like a whiteboard, and it's literally like, check it off. We did that. We got that, what's going on. We have planning documents. We have a number of planning documents that we work through on a game day, as well as just a regular day without, anything going on. So
I think it's really important to know that you do have planning documents. It's a complicated, convoluted process. It's not just straightforward. And with that being said, I kind of want to talk about ROI. I know that even today, as long as sponsorship has been around, it's sometimes really hard to gain an idea of how much a given sponsorship is worth, right? So if I'm with the Mets and I want to go ahead and say, hey, our left field wall is open, it's hard to put a price on that, even still today. Some people claim that they have a specific number in terms of how it's worth, but that's debatable. And so I think that's really relevant with social media. I know that it's not an exact science, and I know people have different formulas, and you don't have to necessarily give us a formula, but at least what are you all doing with the Mets to either go up to sponsors themselves or your higher ups to say, this is happening and this is how we calculate return on investment in terms of here's what this tweet is worth, or here's what this share is worth, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the one nice thing about sponsorship is, or the social sponsorship elements is, there's a number of impressions, there's a number of engagements. Those we can't make up. We can't say, the billboard sign, we anticipate 10 million people to come through the building, and this is how many people are going to see it. We can actually tell you 10 million people saw this tweet because, we get that information. So yeah, I mean, I think that is, and I think we're getting smarter of how we go about selling and doing this kind of stuff. So ultimately, sponsors are looking for, or reach and impressions. They want their brand to be seen, you know a lot of people. And I think we've gotten better working really closely with our sponsorship departments to stop doing the normal sales, like the Dunkin' 2 for $5, just because you threw a Mets hat next to a Dunkin' coffee. And I hate to call it Dunkin', but like just because you put a Mets hat next to a Dunkin' donut doesn't mean it's good content. Because again, like we all come here for entertainment. We're on our social channels for entertainment. We want news and information, but ultimately we're looking to escape. And if you have a scenario in which you have something that is shareable, that someone says, oh, that is funny, that is good, that is entertaining, I agree with this, retweet, those are things that we really have done a good job over the last couple of years to kind of translate back to our sponsorship department of saying, don't go out and sell 5 tweets. Like, let's go ahead and come up with a program that we think is going to be effective. We also meet before the season, or even during the season, we'll meet, a number of times, and just kind of go through like, hey, here are things that we're trying to do. Do you have a partner that would be interested? Because again, one, if we have a partner, we're able to make this bigger and better. If we have some resources that we're able to put behind this, we know we can produce better content, and we'll be able to get better guests for shows or do different things. So yeah, I mean, I think the old moral of the story is that we can't lie about it. We can't tell you that this was seen by 500,000 people if it wasn't, because the data is available. So it really is just coming up with creative and working really closely with our sponsorship team in order to produce content that is socially shareable and valuable to our partners.
I think it's a fantastic point. I want to remind everybody that the Q&A session is open right now. I have 3 questions I'm seeing. We'll go for about 10 more minutes, and then I'll give Will those questions, and then he'll answer them. He's got a hard stop at 6. He's got a game tonight. I just have 1 or 2 more questions myself, Will. Tell us about, working with the players and how you talk to them about making their social media presence congruent with the Mets brand. And then I was going to say talk about Mr. Met, but maybe we'll save that for next. So talk about how you talk to the players about making their brand congruent with the social media with the Mets brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a typical year, in the last couple of years, unfortunately, haven't been, we do social media training with all of our players as well as all of our minor leaguers. So whether you like it or not, if you're a part of the Mets organization, you'll probably cross paths with me, even if you don't use social media. So again, we want to be a resource. We want to be an asset to them. There's a number of players who are very comfortable on social. I've had a number of players who, were not comfortable on social, but would like to utilize it. So we want to be able to be there for both sides of that. And then we also have players who don't use social media at all. Like David Wright, for example, was a guy who, when I first met him, he came in, he's like, listen, we're probably, like, I don't have any social media, so I'm never going to, need you for anything. But if you need anything from me, let me know. And he was always gracious of like, Twitter takeovers, or, you have that awkward, like sticking cameras in people's faces when they're walking on buses, or, working out, or, in compromising, situations of dripping sweat at spring training or whatever. And he was always great about like, hey, I know you're here to do a job and you're part of the team. So, I think it was super important for us to be available to everyone, and it's always great when they reciprocate on that. So I mean, there's players that I deal with on a regular basis, and there's players that I deal with once or twice a year. So ultimately, we want to be an asset to them. We have conversations with them about things, because again, the unfortunate thing is especially our minor leaguers, there's a number of things that, I mean, we draft guys 18 years old, and they've been using social media since they were in middle school. And, like one of the things we always start with is just a kind of a cleanup, just as far as like, something you may have said in middle school to your friends on Twitter might not reflect well now because you're a professional. So I want to make sure I'm available. I constantly am trying to communicate with all of our players. I'll visit, our minor league affiliates as well, usually once a year at least, because I'll see everyone down at spring training. But just try to reinforce that. And again, I want them to know that I'm here as an asset, and our team's here as an asset. Provide them photos, videos, content. Help them with captioning and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I would say I work with our team, again, from a normal standard time. I'm working with all of them at on a regular basis. But with things being a little bit more challenging in our bubble situation here, this year I probably have not worked with them as closely as I have in years past. So definitely something where I know it's a benefit for us when they see that I'm around, and I hope that they find the same.
It's one of the cool things about working in sports. And then you obviously have a different position where you're working hand in hand with the players, but not everybody can say that they do. You also work hand in hand with Mr. Met. And probably you are Mr. Met one way or the other. Tell us just real briefly, because I want to get into questions. We now have about 8 questions. Just real briefly, talk to us about the implementation of Mr. Met. It was probably an easy decision once the league gave you the go ahead. How successful has that been? How successful has it been since you brought in Mrs. Met and they've become a cool, popular couple? Tell us how successful that's been via social media.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the one nice thing about Mr. Met, he gives us the opportunity to, you don't have to be a Mets fan to follow or like Mr. Met. He's able to have fun content. Yeah, I mean, obviously wins and losses affect his content as well, but at the same time too, like, he gives us another outlet that we're able to connect with fans. So, and like you pointed out, Mrs. Met is on Instagram as well as Twitter, and that the Instagram is very new. She came back a number of years ago, but we did not utilize her social channels, and now we're starting to again realize that's a good opportunity for us to reach a young, female fan base. So yeah, I work very closely with Mr. and Mrs. on their social, helping them come up with stuff, and obviously, it's a great asset because of the uniqueness. It does. We know that we reach younger fans. We can have a little more fun with those channels. Gives us an opportunity to get the Mets brand in front of, a different demo.
I love it. Well, that's it for me, Will. We have about 9 questions that'll probably take up the last 20 minutes or so. Maybe I'll ask you like a closing question in terms of like, what can you tell the kids? But I'll go to this Q&A. I will answer these as I receive them. Well, I'll maybe jump around because we have almost some that are almost kind of repeating. Okay. E, my man says, what's up, Dr. Brown? What's up, E? My question for Will is this. What are some strategies that have helped the Mets YouTube page maximize subscribers, engagement, and revenue?
That's a great question. That is an area where we've definitely put a lot of resources in, and we are getting better at it. I would say consistency. We were very inconsistent about posting. I think also the reoccurring content, we've spent a little bit more time and effort with our productions department to be able to produce reoccurring content. So again, people will, set that alarm to say, hey, I want more of this. So when the next episode of this comes out. So I think those are probably two of the major factors. We try to post at least one video a day. There sometimes even more than that, but it is consistently putting out content. And then also, we look at the analytics on YouTube specifically, and we can see like the sweet spot. There's a certain length of video that people will watch, and it's also good to see like if how long you stick around, if the video is a little bit lengthy, and then if you pop to another video afterwards. So we definitely look really closely at analytics, and I think the two is being consistent there, posting on a regular basis, and having that reoccurring content that you find gets you the numbers.
And that's the benefit of having a big time organization in comparison to a startup. For example, you all have analytics at your fingertips. There are two questions, Will, both from an anonymous user or two different anonymous users about segmentation. How can social media play a role in sport market segmentation, the segmentation process? I'd like to know how social media helps or developed market segmentation processes. And then the next one says, does each post of social media target different fan bases? It's a really good question because segmentation is obviously, the Mets have such a diverse fan group. So go ahead with that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I would probably look more towards the platform than necessarily the posts individually. Again, there's going to be something that we would post on Twitter that would speak to a younger demo, or even just someone in the area. Like if we post about promo night, like tonight is Seinfeld night, and Jerry is out on the field right now. So like something like that's going to be like, we'll target that more towards people in the area. Someone like yourself is a fan, but you're not going to come to Seinfeld night on a Wednesday night, due to your location. So again, like I think we'll do that, but for the most part, we really do look at the different platforms as like something that goes on Facebook is going to probably not do well on maybe our TikTok account. Like a video that we would post on TikTok, again, probably would get lost on Facebook, and vice versa. So knowing that Facebook is probably an older audience, Twitter's probably the hardest one. It's still real time. People are, if you're not there, you miss it, kind of thing. Again, you can get caught up at the end of the day, but for the most part, like if we put something out at 8 a.m. and you jump on it at 10 p.m., you might not scroll back or see that. So we utilize, I think, each platform individually to kind of segment. And again, like, not a surprise, but like your Instagrams and your TikToks are definitely for, we cater to a younger demo, whereas Facebook is probably an older demo, and Twitter is kind of like the catch-all. Like we know we probably have some younger people on there. But that, again, that platform is, with the content we're going to put out there will be different than what we do on the others.
That's fantastic. It's always interesting to see. So I guess it's just up to you to decipher each and every market in and of itself. Do you have analytics which help you kind of decipher which market is on which platform, just real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say we have a strategy for each platform, and we're looking at those analytics daily. And then, again, we'll probably recap at the end of the month, and then in a couple months, we'll do it at the end of the year and say, hey, we had a really good year. What are the things that we did individually that we thought were, that got us here, and how do we replicate those, or how do we find more things like this?
That's great. Thank you, Will. Tien says, hi, Will. Thanks for joining us today. The Mets are about to have a major rebranding campaign for the 2022 season on social media with an outside advising agency, or I don't know if it's advertising or advising. Can you give us some details on how you're coordinating this effort with the agency? I don't know how much you're able to go into this, but to the best of your ability, tell us, if you can't go into it, what 22 is going to look like.
Yeah, someone reads the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know how much I really want to get into that, but at the same time too, I will say, like, we have a lot of great people in the office here that have been here for, a couple months, also, longer than I have been here, 10, 20 years. We all have the same goal of producing really great content for Mets fans, whether it's here at the ballpark, on our social channels, in game, whatever it is, we all have the same goal. And, we're definitely excited about the opportunity of working with, anyone, outside company, inside company, whatever it is that shares those same goals and is able to help and provide resources that ultimately cater to the fan. That's really what we all are here to do. As I said earlier, I am a Mets fan. I grew up a Mets fan. Both of my children are Mets fans. My wife is a Mets fan, all because of me. So again, I think we're excited about 2022. I think, this was the first year with new ownership. So, I think, we'll all have a better understanding of what's expected and what direction we really want to go in. So, yeah, I think ultimately very excited. I think we'll work really closely with them, and it's unfortunate because I would trade just about anything to make it the postseason, but we're not going to make the postseason this year, and I don't have a time machine. So, I think the benefit that we will have is these next couple months we'll really be able to start the plan work for the 2022 season. And if you're a Mets fan or even just a passerby, like I expect really big things for us next year.
It's going to be exciting, man. I mean, as a fan, and also I'm hearing some great things along within the organization. So that's definitely exciting. Muse has stolen one of my last questions, but I'll of course put it out here. Besides being efficient, what else do you look for in a great social media personnel for your organization? How do first impressions affect that? And how do we get those opportunities to show that? So really, how are we getting into this whole game of social media? And besides being efficient, like he says, what do you look for in great social media personnel?
I think my easy default is this is an insane amount of work. It's a 24/7, 365. And I tell you, it's not like a fake, legitimately every single day of the year, we are producing content and posting on our social media channels. And even the time when we are not posting directly, we are still planning ahead. We had shoots earlier. And in fact, once I'm done here, I'm going to go, and we have someone from The Sopranos here that we're going to shoot with. So we're constantly creating content and producing content. So I think, being creative, being resourceful is obviously, two great assets to have. I think if you are looking to get your first gig in the social media, sports social media world, I would recommend, doing everything you can to, bring some attention to yourself. And, we've hired people who, couldn't get gigs. They were just like, hey, listen, I think I'm going to be really good at this. And they started a Dodgers blog and just started blogging about the Dodgers and creating content around the Dodgers, and built that up to a few 100,000 people. And you're like, that's what we do. That's exactly what we do. So you have that experience. So I think the one benefit of somebody who's trying to get in the world of social media is find that niche that you want to get into and just start doing it. You have the capability of doing a startup yourself. In fact, I spoke at Pace last night, and there was someone who came in. They were like, I really want to get into JUCO, social media for JUCO. And I was like, yeah, I don't know of anyone doing, junior college football. And I'm like, all you need is one or two crazy plays or big hits. If you get, and I would imagine getting a credential at most of those places is probably really easy. I'm sure they would love the coverage. And, just again, it was one of those things where, hey, just go and do it. You don't need, figure out what you're passionate about. I think that's the other thing too, is people sometimes get caught up in the fact that I want to do it all. I want to, start small, start with an Instagram, start with a TikTok, start with something that you can manage and come up, create content. Because once you do it, you'll realize, and again, some of the people that we've hired who basically did their own thing first, they were like, yeah, I have a Google Doc and I just throw a bunch of stuff in there. And then this way I know what I'm doing for the week. It's like, that's a content calendar. You're doing what we're doing, maybe, a little bit, smaller scale, but like, that's exactly what we do. So, I think the one nice thing about this world is you can get social media experience right away. Like, you have the capability of doing that on your own. And that stuff, I look at all that stuff, like, because again, like, that's what we do. And I think that's the biggest separator from people who really want to be here, or people who kind of get excited by the fact that, like, you may get to be on the field, or you may get to work with players, or you may get to do certain things that are cool. And it's definitely not lost on me that I have an awesome job, but like, it's a lot of work. There's a lot more grind and hustle than there is of those, cool, like, I did an interview, or like, we were able to work with players on a video or something along those lines. So yeah, I think that's
It's great to hear, Will. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be pointed out as well. Like we said, your job has changed from 8 years ago to 6 years ago to 5 years ago to 3 years ago. So this is one of those unique positions where get into it now, because it's not like a stagnant role. We are looking for X, Y, and Z, because X, Y, and Z in 3 years won't exist in social. So I like what you said. Just start doing it. Just keep up to date and start doing it. We have a number of questions. I want to get into one from Dr. Kelly, who's our graduate advisor. Really great session. My question's about the Mets as an organization balancing Black Lives Matter last summer and social media voices of the players. I know myself that Dom spoke out a little bit about it, but tell us how you as an organization balanced that and how much of a voice you gave your players.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, I would say, one of the more impactful things we've done as an organization on social media. And it was obviously a difficult conversation to have. And I was really proud internally of the organization of, like, how many people got involved, and then the end result. There was a lot of tough conversations that we all had to have. But ultimately, what kind of stirred out of this was, we have a new department that kind of has formed from this, diversity and inclusion. So, we work really closely with them as far as, different times of the year. And, one of the conversations we've had with, that department has now created some BRGs, which are business resource groups for different, people within the organization. So there's the She Unit, who is female employees, and there's one for parents, there's one for Latinos. Like, there's so many different. I think there's like 9 or 10 different organizations within our organization. Again, to bring insight. And before we did anything for Hispanic Heritage Month, we connected with the BRGs. Before we did anything for Women's History Month, we connected with the BRGs. So, having those resource groups to us from a social standpoint has been extremely important. And Donovan Mitchell Sr., not the one you're probably thinking of, but his dad heads up our diversity and inclusion. And I think one of the great things is, being able to have, him. He's been with the organization for a long period of time. He has a really good understanding, of this. But again, to have those conversations, and one of the conversations we've all had is, let's not just make Women's History Month, that month. Like, let's include this in our regular programming. And that was one of the things that I thought we did a really good job of like, let's make sure that we are including different players, and just even with the amount of content and stuff that we're doing. So a specific example was, we rolled out a program on our social channels highlighting a female employee and kind of telling their story. And we went from, people who've been with the organization for 25 years to people who started a year or two ago, and, people who work with the players on the field, to people who, are doing, finance or something in the office. So, and we decided, what, doing this, once a week during the month doesn't check, it checks the box, but it doesn't represent the organization. So we decided, let's continue it. Let's make it go. Let's make sure we do one of these a month to make it part of our regular programming. And we've done that with the other BRGs as well. So, I mean, specifically, I think the Black Lives Matter post that we did was just the start of it. And I think, from from our internal organization, I'm really proud of, the steps that we've taken there, and the fact that we have decided as an organization that this needs to be common culture for us. It has to be a regular thing for us. This can't be it's that time of the year, let's do this. So yeah, let's definitely over celebrate, when those opportunities come up, but at the same time too, let's make it part of the norm, and let's have those tough conversations. We have Spirit Day coming up, and we celebrated Pride Day here. Let's make sure everyone feels represented, because Queens legitimately is the most diverse place in the world. And, we have so many millions of people right in our backyard that may have not felt represented, whether it was our social channels or coming to the ballpark. And we want to make sure that we're part of that change.
Will, I think there is no better way to end. I mean, I'm proud to have you on here. I'm proud to say that the Mets can adequately speak to those issues. I'm really happy that the social media team understands it. It's great to hear. And I think it's a great note to close on. I apologize for the Q&As that we couldn't get to. I know that you got a hard stop at 6, so we're about 5:58 right now. We'll just say thank you, Will. If we were here in person, everyone would be giving you a standing O. I'll give you an ovation myself. Just want to say thank you so much for being here for this session, for teaming up with NYU. We'd love to have you back sometime, and good luck tonight and for the rest of the season.
Thank you. No, I truly appreciate it. And please, anytime. And to any of the students, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, please feel free. Happy to connect with you. And if your questions were not answered, or if you have additional questions, happy to connect with you that way.
Awesome. You all heard it there. Will's willing to give out his LinkedIn. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for everybody who showed up. And again, thank you so much to Will. We will be seeing you all later. Thank you, everybody.